All right, great. So it's 10 a.m. We'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you're joining us from. My name is Laura LeBur, and I'm a marine science educator at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystems exhibit. Welcome back to our Career Dives Live Conversations in Marine Science series. We're halfway through the series, and we hope that you've been enjoying the career dives so far. But if you're new, this summer series will highlight the career tracks, interests, and projects of marine science professionals working with the Smithsonian Marine Station and Ecosystems exhibit. While people are joining, like I said before, you can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen to let us know where you're from and joining us from right now. But as everyone joins the webinar, I'd like to point out some of the features. So you can use the Q&A box to ask your questions to our guest. The Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen and it has the 2 speech bubbles. You can submit a question at any time. Please make sure that you're submitting your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible throughout our program, especially at the end, but please be patient with us as there may be a high influx of questions and we may not be able to get to all of them. There's another educator in the background named Erin. She's going to be keeping track of your questions, so if you see a message on the chat box, it will be coming from her. Throughout the program, you can use the chat box to send us messages and to answer any questions that we may have for you. Your comments are visible only to Smithsonian staff, so please keep them on topic and appropriate. Today's program is going to be about 40 minutes. If we do go a little bit over, we will announce it, and Kelly can maybe stick on and answer some questions towards the end, but if you have to run, you know, do your thing. So without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So it is my extreme joy to introduce to you today Kelly Pitts, a research technician for the Coral Health and Marine Probiotics Lab, also known as the CHAMP Lab. She's a certified diver and conducts field work as well as lab work on the Stony Coral Tissue Loss Disease Project. She's an excellent communicator and has been preparing a series of really cool videos about the CHAMP Lab for our YouTube channel. We'll make sure to link those videos in the chat so you guys can see for yourselves. But good morning and welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thank you. You know, Laura, I have to say that going back and looking through all of these photos was so exciting, going and looking at all of the different memories associated. So I'm very excited to share my experiences. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much. You were, I think, one of the first people who emailed us back to say that you would be willing to participate. So we really appreciate that. And I know you've got some really cool pictures to share with us today. So I'm excited for you to share them with our audience as well.
Absolutely.
So let's, I guess, go all the way back to the beginning of your career. And how did you get interested in marine science and what did that look like for you as a kid?
Well, let me see if I can share my screen real quick so you can see some embarrassing young photos of me. Let me see. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Looks good.
So I'm originally from Maryland, and I put this picture, an aerial photo of the Chesapeake Bay, just to show that pretty much anywhere you go in Maryland, you're right on the water. So I grew up, my parents had a boat, so we would take the boat out on summers, and we would go swimming at the beach during the summer. And one of my favorite pastimes growing up during the summertime was going crabbing. That's a big Maryland tradition. So we would go crabbing as a family, and most of the time we would just throw the crabs back, but just being in that ecosystem with blue herons and crabs and oysters and pelicans everywhere is truly magical for me growing up. And I loved animals so much. We had a stream in our backyard, so we would bring back crayfish and snakes and turtles and frogs growing up back to my parents to show them. And I actually wanted to be a veterinarian because I loved animals so much. And I really didn't even know that marine biology was an option for me growing up. So it wasn't until my dad and my brother went on a scuba diving trip. They were part of the Boy Scouts, and they were both Eagle Scouts, so they were really into scouting. And they got scuba certified and got to go down to Cozumel, Mexico to go on a trip with the Boy Scouts. And my brother was 4 years older than me, and I was so jealous of this. I couldn't wait for 4 more years to get scuba certified because I saw their pictures and I just wanted to be a part of that. So I joined a venturing crew, which was a co-ed Boy Scout troop. And I got scuba certified. And for the 4 years after my brother and my dad got to go, I finally got my trip to Mexico. And there's a picture here on the left of me. I don't know if you could see this, but this was the morning before I got really, really sunburned all over my face because I forgot to put sunscreen on. And all of the dive masters called me Tomate because I had such a bad sunburn. It looked like my face looked like a tomato. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so much fun. I loved the camaraderie, and I got to enjoy all the jokes and then go scuba diving underwater all day long and see these giant walls of coral. So I was immediately sold. So I also put this slide in here just in case you're in middle school or high school and looking to get involved. I was part of this venturing crew, which was a co-ed Boy Scouts troop. And I got to do all of these different adventurous activities like go hiking, rock climbing, whitewater rafting as part of this group. And our venturing crew put a team together for Envirothon, which was actually called Environmental Olympics before it was called Envirothon, where you could go out into nature, you could form a team with your friends and take tests about the environment in order to compete for scholarships for college. So if you have any interest in making money for your college tuition going forward, maybe Envirothon or a venture crew would be something for you. And when I was lucky enough in high school that our advisor of our venturing crew worked for the Department of Natural Resources, and he was actually a professor teaching ecology classes at Johns Hopkins University. So I got the pleasure of working with him, and his kind of unspoken motto was, you can always do more. So we volunteered for everything. We planted thousands of trees. We created an aquaculture system for colleges. We went to green festivals to speak about green energy and green products that you can use to be more environmentally friendly. And after all of this volunteering, the whole team got a Governor's Volunteer Service Award, which looked great on a resume. So if you can get involved at a young age in something, maybe that brings you out into the environment, or just volunteering in general, I think that really goes a long way, and you can write it on your resume to go getting into college. So after all of this, I went to St. Mary's Honors College of Maryland. And it was a small liberal arts school right on the water. So you can see all the buildings here right on the water. And I was surrounded by really smart kids because it was an honors college. So I really had to step up and prove my worth at this college. So the college actually didn't have marine biology as a major, but because it was located on the water, it had a lot of different biological opportunities. One of which you can see in the picture in the upper left here is you could join a group to make this oyster reef, where we're taking oyster shells from restaurants and then putting them out on the reef so that these oysters could grow along those shells. So there was lots of different opportunity here, even though they didn't have a marine biology career or a major. And one of the things that I fell in love with at St. Mary's was they had this wet lab in the basement where they had saltwater corals and fish that you could do research with. So you can see this picture down here. I did my research on coral, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But because St. Mary's didn't have a marine biology major that they offered, I had to kind of be proactive and find other opportunities while I was in undergraduate to really build that resume in marine biology. So one of those opportunities was working at the National Aquarium of Baltimore, so as an intern, so I could do an internship there. And this actually gave me credit that I could put towards my college tuition. So you can see me in the Amazon River display here feeding fish, and I helped with physicals of turtles and stingrays. And one of my favorite things that was so inspiring to me was I got to work with Cordelia, which was a giant Pacific octopus. And you can see my mom's filming and my dad's hands are in the video as well as mine. And this octopus was just so inspiring and so exciting for me. It made me it made it really clear that I wanted to learn more about the marine world. Now, also during my undergraduate career, I worked at a summer camp down in the Florida Keys during the summer. So this allowed me to live down in the Keys on the water and learn a lot while I got to teach others how to sail on a boat. So I would stay on a boat for a week at a time, so kind of living under the stars at night and then under the water during the day. And I got to teach these kids how to sail, but also teach them about the marine environment, everything from mangroves to coral reef and everything in between. So I learned a lot from this experience and also got to spend some time living next to a coral reef, which was really beneficial for me.
Kelly, what was the name of that program that you participated in with the sailing?
This was the Florida Sea Base. So there's actually, if you're interested in going to a summer camp like this, there's a few camps down in the Keys that you could attend. There's Sea Camp and Florida Sea Base. So if you wanted to learn how to sail or spend time on the water, maybe that's something that you could get into, or even work at either of these places to build your resume, kind of like I did. So then I also went to, this was the last thing I did outside of St. Mary's while I was going to my undergraduate career. I went to James Cook University in Australia for my study abroad program. And I could actually stay there for 6 months and take classes that I could work towards for my undergraduate career. So this was finally the opportunity that I could have to take my marine biology classes that I was so craving so much. So I got to take marine conservation in Australia, and we got to go out onto the Great Barrier Reef and look at all of the beautiful organisms that live on the reef there. And then I got to come back and bring those credits back with me to apply towards my undergraduate career. So then all of this kind of led to my senior thesis as an undergraduate student. And again, here's that picture of the wet lab down in the basement of the school. And I could actually do research on a soft coral. And soft corals are soft because they don't have a skeleton underneath to give them support. So they almost look like an algae when they're underwater. But I got to study how ocean acidification affects them. And I could spend so much time explaining ocean acidification. I could do a whole nother talk on that. But for right now, just ocean acidification is making the oceans more acidic due to climate change, to simplify. So we were making the water in our experiments more acidic and seeing what effect it had on these soft corals. So I got to do the research all year, and I wrote a thesis up about it. And down here, I'm presenting this to my senior class at St. Mary's. And I was so proud because the college had asked me and a few other students if they could take me to a conference in Portland, Oregon. And my head exploded. I was so excited. I thought this was an amazing opportunity. I was graduating at the top of my class. I was so proud. And I got to present at this conference. And then as soon as the conference ended, I had to apply to jobs. And my head was so big, I thought I would get so many opportunities. And I didn't hear back from a single one. Not a single one. I applied to probably 100 jobs and I didn't get a single bite. And I was thinking that maybe my computer wasn't attached to the rest of the world because I just wasn't hearing anything back. But sometimes because marine biology is so competitive, you don't hear back and you have to figure out what to do when that happens or if that happens to you. So I got an opportunity after undergraduate. I finally got an opportunity to work as an aquarist creating and cleaning fish tanks in people's private homes, which was not where I thought it would be at all. But this job actually was really beneficial to me because I got to learn about the chemistry of the water, so much of the chemistry that the corals need to grow. So I learned a ton from this job, and I really put my elbows in and cleaned tanks and really did my dues, paid my dues cleaning up these fish tanks, and it actually ended up being a great opportunity for me. So I went to, because I wasn't exactly sure I wanted to stay in marine or in that aquarist position, I decided, I think everyone who's in marine biology has a pivotal moment at some point in their career. So I pivoted and I decided I had to go back and get a higher education after undergraduate degree so that I could get more experience so I could get those jobs when I applied for them. So I went to Nova Southeastern University in Florida, and this was right on the coral reef track in Florida. So you can see the picture here. There's a marina right in front of the school, so you could come down out of your class, get on a boat, and go right out to the ocean and do your research, which I thought was amazing. There were so many opportunities from this. So I was in a lab that was, or I got into a lab that was big into traveling. So we actually went to this small island called Caribou Cay in Belize that actually the Smithsonian runs. So I didn't know that I would end up working for the Smithsonian when I did this, but I got some experience doing that before I got linked up with the Smithsonian. So you can see in this picture, there's coral reef located all around the island. So you could go out and collect your samples on the coral reef and bring them right back to this research station. So you can see down in the bottom left here. That's the research station that's open air, so no air conditioning or anything. You're right in the weather in Belize on the water. And Caribou Cay was such a magical place because they had so much life around that island. So you can see some of the pictures here of the magical life around, like squid during the night dives or different fish. We got to go spear or lionfish spearing because lionfish are invasive, so we were trying to get rid of them from the reef. And then one of my favorite moments from Caribou was the lab had a sand floor. And one night we were working really late into the night, and a whole bunch of baby sea turtles just erupted from this nest in the middle of the lab. And I looked down, and all of a sudden I was surrounded by about 100 baby sea turtles. So we got to pick them up and put them in buckets and then bring them to the beach to release them on the island.
That's so wild, Kelly. We got a really cool question actually from Andrew, and he wants to know, are the squid that you have a picture of, are they firefly squid?
You know, I don't know that answer. I don't know my squid very well, but I don't know if this helps or not, but it fit in the palm of my hand, and I could actually go up to the surface of the water and he would sit in my hand. So he's fairly small squid, but I unfortunately don't know the type of squid that it was.
If anyone knows the type of squid, feel free to leave that in our chat.
Yes, please. I would like to know too.
So you guys feel free to keep asking your questions in the Q&A. We are gonna, Christopher asks, how many lionfish did you remove?
I have a picture of 15 or so lionfish lined up on the dock that we could remove from the reef. That was in just a couple dives in one day, but whenever we got a free moment, we would go spear lionfish and bring them back because there was a cook on the island who would actually make them or fry them up for us. So we tried to remove as many fish or lionfish that we could from the reef.
So as Kelly said, I know a lot of you aren't from Florida. So if you didn't know, lionfish are invasive. They originally from the Pacific Ocean, and they've made their way to the Atlantic. And throughout the Caribbean, they are all over the reefs. And they're such a problem because they eat other small fish and they can decimate the populations. So we definitely want to remove them. We want to eat them to beat them. As Kelly said, they're really tasty. They're a delicious white fish. They are venomous. They do have some venomous spines. So if you are hunting them, or if you definitely want to be careful of that. So if you do live in Florida, you may know, but we did have a lot of panelists from like Maryland and from other countries. So I just wanted to mention that one specific thing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that one.
We have one more question maybe about this slide, and then I'll let you move on. But Bemsadar wants to know, did you encounter any sharks?
Yes. One of the fun things about caribou is that there are nurse sharks all over the place. That was the shark that we saw the most out on the reef. And especially when we were bringing back these lionfish, they'd always want to come up and see. They would smell the lionfish that you were bringing back to the boat, and they want to come investigate. So there were nurse sharks all over the place. They were kind of like puppies that would come up and check out what you were doing. They were curious, and then they'd swim away. But that's, for me, that's personally the only type of shark that I saw at Caribou. But there are different types of bigger sharks that swim around there for sure. All right, so I guess I'll continue.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So my my master's thesis was looking at coral spawning. So corals are stuck to the ground where they are, but when they're babies, they can actually swim around. So when they're coral larvae, which are the coral babies, they can actually swim around and choose a good place to land on the reef and settle and then start their life growing right where they land. So we got to go down for the spawning event. So corals, these specific species we were looking at, spawn once a year. And we can actually put this tent over top of the coral, and all of the gamete bundles, that's the little bundles of sperm and egg that the coral release, could be collected in this tent. So you can see the tubes at the top that we could remove from the tent and bring right back to the lab really quickly to fertilize in the lab. So we could bring back those gametes. So I took those little tiny coral babies or coral larvae, and we fertilized them in the lab, and we raised them. I was looking at the effects of, again, ocean acidification, so similar to my undergraduate thesis, and also ocean warming, their impacts on these little coral larvae. So we had to set up, you can see all of these tanks with wires going everywhere. We had pH probes to monitor the pH of the water because we wanted to make it more acidic. And then we had heaters in the water to make the water warmer, to make it like it's ocean warming, to signify ocean warming. And you could see the corals grow in these different situations and see how these environmental stressors are changing how they grow and how they do their daily activities. So another thing, because my research occurred once a year, because it was over spawning, that left a lot of the months of the year available for me to focus on my classes. And then I was in a lab with a ton of other students, so I got to help participate in all of their projects as well. So if you're looking to go to graduate school, you definitely want to get into a school where you can be a part of a whole bunch of different projects in the marine community. So you can see there's a picture here on the left. We were taking this tiny biplane over to the Bahamas to do research in the Bahamas. We went to conferences. This is pictures in Belize. We went to Belize multiple times. And one of my favorite pictures, for some reason, this is near and dear to my heart, is we are in the airport going to Belize with all of our scientific gear that we had to get onto the plane and get to the island. So these different trips require a lot of equipment that you have to keep track of. And it goes to show how much work goes into these trips.
I love that. I have a picture almost exactly the same, like all the bags, all the scuba gear from when I did a research trip to the Maldives. And it's just like, all the work that it takes to get through the airport and get through lugging all those bins is like worth the experience and the research. But it's definitely, that is one of the funnest. You're so stressed, everyone's tired, and you're just all like getting through it together.
Yeah, hustling through the airport just to make sure we don't miss the flight.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if any of you in the audience have ever tried to fly with scuba gear in your bags. It usually gets flagged. So there is an added, you definitely need to be early for the airport for that one.
Definitely. Yeah, we had microscopes with us and liquid nitrogen, which is like dry ice to keep things really cold. So we definitely had to get to the airport well in advance.
I have a question for you, Kelly, since you're talking
Sure.
about this. Did you have any like influential mentors like throughout your college experience, and what was the most valuable lesson that they taught you?
That's a great question. And I actually have a slide just for that. I'll jump ahead real quick. So this was my advisor in my graduate degree or in my graduate career. This is Dr. Nicole Fogarty, and she actually works at UNCW right now. She moved from Nova, but she is one of my biggest mentors through marine biology, because she is a woman in science who has so many responsibilities that she juggles with grace. She is a part of everything and just is able to do that and maintain a family with 2 young kids at the same time. And she goes on some of these trips with us, and she would do a lot of the tasks right along there with you. So she wouldn't ever ask you to do something that she wouldn't do herself. So she was always in the thick of it with us. And one of the things that I respected most about Dr. Nicole Fogarty was that she trusted me. And that sounds, kind of topical, but she, showed me, all right, this is going to be your thesis. And then I went down to the island without her. It was just me and one other colleague. And we did my entire master's on our own without any help from the lab or her. So she really trusted me. And that gave me the opportunity to step up and really fill some big shoes. So she was kind of my hero in my master's degree.
That's great. Yeah, I think fieldwork and especially research, it's hard to micromanage your students when they need, you have more than, there's only one of you and so many students, you have to just really let them do their thing. And I think, you showed her that you definitely had it under control, especially since you finished your project so quickly and you were able to help out a lot of your classmates, which I think is really, really cool. When you're organized and you have everything mapped out, you can really take the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of stress, which I guess any higher education is, but it was probably the best 2 years of my life so far. I truly, truly appreciated it so much.
Also, we've had an answer to your squid question,
Oh,
asking
yay.
well received. Timothy, thank you very much for confirming it's a Caribbean reef squid. And I will not even try to pronounce the scientific name because I will mess it up.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's great. See, I'm learning stuff too along the way.
We're all a part of the community, helping each other.
There you go. So I just want to go back to one of the slides. This is the last slide that I'll talk about for my master's thesis. But because I got to do my master's so quickly, my research over the course of a couple months, I was involved in a whole bunch of other projects, like I said. And one of them was going down to the Bahamas, and we could actually make these little Christmas trees. They look like Christmas trees, but they're PVC pipes that you could hang these corals on like ornaments. And the corals would grow without the competition of algae or other competing elements on the reef. So they could grow really quickly on these trees, and then we could outplant them or plant them back onto the reef once they were bigger. So this was a big project that was started in the Bahamas. We got to set up a nursery in the Bahamas with one of my colleagues. And I put this picture in here because it is so funny to me. This work sometimes is grueling, where you're spending all day underwater and you're swimming back and forth and you're collecting corals and distributing corals. And one of my coworkers caught me during my breaks where I was just taking a time to relax on the bottom of the ocean, which is so funny. So, you got to keep working and take the breaks when you need them, just quick breaks, but then keep moving and get back to work.
Yeah, scuba diving underwater work, cleaning those trees and hanging the corals. I've done it also, so I can definitely relate to how it is taxing, and you do need to take the time for yourself, and obviously safely. We cannot stress safety enough for scuba diving, but just to regulate your breathing and like bring your heart rate down a little bit so that you can conserve oxygen, and taking those breaks is really, really important. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I also want to stress that I was not sleeping. Sleeping underwater, bad idea, but
Not a mermaid.
Yeah, not a mermaid, but I just thought it was a funny picture to put in because you just get so busy sometimes and you need those comical relief moments.
It's hard work too. I mean, you're burning through it.
Absolutely.
So I guess, I don't mean to cut you off, sorry.
No, that's
I
okay.
wanted to ask you a question though, because I think it's really cool that you, you didn't really have like a marine biology program, and you had to reach out and make all these experiences happen for yourself. And I think that's really an interesting topic that we haven't really heard so far, that, you knew that you were interested in it, even though your college didn't necessarily have like a marine biology degree or like career path. You said, well, I'm interested in this. I'm going to have this opportunity. I want to pursue these opportunities, and sort of like quilts together this really beautiful and diverse like experience for yourself. And I think that is really, if you're interested in, if you go to a school and you're like, hey, I am interested in this, you can still make those opportunities for yourself. And you presented your, senior thesis at a conference, like that's incredible.
Yeah, so this, just to reiterate, if you go to a school and you're landlocked or away from the ocean, there's definitely opportunities out there for you. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is sitting on Google and just, searching any opportunities, any scholarships that I could apply to, or any internships or volunteer opportunities just to get involved, because staying up with your resume and putting a whole bunch of different experiences on it when you're younger is such a wonderful tool. And I think a lot of people who have hired me in the past appreciate those different experiences that I could put towards the job that I was doing.
And I think what's really cool too about your story that you shared, you finished really strongly from your bachelor's, and you had a hard time finding like the career that you wanted for yourself. And I think a lot of us do end up in that situation where we get out of our degrees and we had such a good time and we were really moving forward in academia, and then we enter the job market and there may not be a lot of funding available, there may not be a lot of jobs available. Many of you may like relate, or this might be a situation that you're finding yourselves in now. And sometimes you just have to keep moving forward, and it may not always look like what you pictured, but I mean, I think your advice on just like taking something that you could still learn and grow from and making it what you wanted was really, really, especially now, like I feel like really good advice.
Thanks. Yeah, it definitely took a learning curve for me to understand that that's how things go. But if you can hear that before you get started, I think that's really helpful for you guys if anyone's starting a career in marine biology.
So usually we ask, like, what are some key skills that you were able to gain? And what do you think every aspiring marine biologist might want to have in their toolkit? Do you have anything else you might like to add to that? Or do you think that kind of like ties into what you would say?
One of the big things that I took away from, especially my graduate degree, was marine biology is uniquely a very small community. So you never know when you'll be able to run into people that you've worked with in the past. So something that I treasure from my graduate degree was I got to do all these different projects working with a lot of different people. But I will suggest definitely make a good impression with those people, because you never know if they'll come back and offer you a job later or connect you with someone who was looking for someone. You never know how that network works out. So if I have a piece of advice to give everyone, is do your best with the people who are working around you, because you definitely will probably see them again.
That's great. That is great advice, Kelly. So I guess in the interest of time, we're getting up on our 40-minute mark. So I want to ask you, when you finished your graduate degree and you wrapped up your research, did you have any jobs before coming to the Smithsonian, and how did you end up here with us at the Smithsonian?
That's a great question. So I will breeze through this because I know we're running late on time, but
If you have time to stick around, if you have time to stick around after, and our guests, our attendees can stick around too, we can run a little bit over. That's totally fine.
Great. Okay. Well, I will go through this then. So I heard about stony coral tissue loss disease while I was at Nova Southeastern University. And before I graduated, I had tried to get involved with this because I heard how bad it was. So this, just to give you an idea of what stony coral tissue loss disease is, this is a brain coral, and you can see all of the brown healthy tissue on it. But it has this disease where the tissue is actually peeling off of the coral and floating away. And you can see the coral skeleton underneath of it. And over time, you can see just from January to February, in 1 month, this tissue has peeled away and only 40% of the coral is left alive. So it kills these corals quite quickly. And most coral diseases only affect 1 or 2 species, but stony coral tissue loss disease affects about 22 species of reef-building coral, which is very unique and very scary for our Florida reef tract, or our Florida coral reef. So this is kind of a plug for the videos that Laura was mentioning at the beginning of our talk today. But this is a screenshot of one of our videos. So if you want to hear more about stony coral tissue loss disease, there's another video coming out very soon about stony coral tissue loss disease. But you can see just how many corals on the reef have died because of this disease. So it affects the whole reef, essentially, and is super detrimental to the coral reef. And I just want to give this example, and I'll do it quickly, but this is a scuba diver up in the left corner here. And this coral is Big Mama. Is near and dear to a lot of our hearts in Florida. And Big Mama is actually older than the United States. She's 330 years old. And just in a few months, Big Mama had actually died because of stony coral tissue loss disease. And because she's no longer growing, she can start eroding away and won't provide habitat for the ecosystem anymore. So just to go to show how bad this disease is, and then the disease has been all along the Florida reef tract in the red there, and is now spreading to a whole bunch of different countries throughout the Caribbean, which is very scary, and we're trying to stop it as quick as we can. So one of the opportunities I got before going to the Smithsonian was grinding into these corals. We would grind a trench into the coral and then fill it with amoxicillin, which is an antibiotic. So just like you would take an antibiotic for an ear infection to make you better, we could give the coral antibiotic to stop the disease from progressing. So I had asked to get involved with this project, and the first day I was on the project, I found myself grinding into this very threatened coral, which was a very weird experience for me, but very exciting that we could try to help and cure the coral from the disease. So I got to study different ways that the the antibiotics could stop the disease from progressing. So you can see the disease here, and we tried to cut into the coral and put the antibiotics into the coral so that the disease stops moving across the healthy tissues there. So that kind of got me interested in stony coral tissue loss disease. And then I heard about the Smithsonian. Actually, Dr. Nicole Fogarty came back and said, hey, there's this job that I heard about, you'd be great for it, and encouraged me to apply. And that was using probiotics, which are these bacteria that provide health benefit to the host. So we know probiotics in yogurt or kombucha or aged cheese that help us live a healthier life. We can actually apply probiotics to the coral reef. So I know we're running over time. I'll just show a couple more pictures from the Champ Lab, but there are videos coming out about all of this that will also help show a lot of the detail.
Before you do, Kelly, we had a question from Ronan about what causes the stony coral disease. Is it a bacteria, virus, etc.? I know you mentioned using antibiotics and probiotics, so maybe you want to answer that pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a great question. So far, we don't know what is causing the disease, but we think that it's bacteria because the antibiotic is working to kill the pathogen. So we do think it's at least in part a bacterial infection. So that was a great question. So this is the CHAMP lab, busy at work. We have healthy corals in the lab here that we can take our probiotics from. So we isolate this bacteria from the healthy coral. You can see all of the molecular work that goes into this. And this is Dr. Blake Ushijima, who started the CHAMP lab, and he's sampling from a disease coral there. So we research these corals and get the bacteria and make it really, really concentrated so that we can put it back on the reef. And just as a snapshot of how important they are, this is a coral that wasn't treated versus a coral that was treated. And you can see the coral tissue survives on the fragment that was treated with probiotics. So we can grow the bacteria into a liquid or in seawater and drape that over the coral. So like put that over the coral, or we can mix it with a paste, which is almost like a toothpaste, and apply that directly to the lesion to really get the probiotics onto the coral. And this is a big event. So we finally get to put the coral probiotics out on the reef. So you can see all of the people who are involved, all the work to get the gear ready. And this is a picture. This is my last slide, I promise. This is a picture of us using these bags. So we could put a bag over top of a coral and fill that with the bacteria and allow the bacteria to grow on the coral. And then we remove the bag and bring it back to the boat and monitor the coral over time to see if the probiotics actually stopped the disease from progressing across the coral. So it's a lot of work underwater, and we're very excited we get to use the paste for the first time coming up in the next few months. So that's where we are now, and that's kind of what I do at the CHAMP lab.
Very cool. So we've had a lot of questions, a lot of really good questions about your work at the CHAMP lab. Erin has linked the link to our YouTube. So if you guys want to check out those videos that Kelly mentioned, there are 2 videos up now. There's a lot of other really great content there for you guys to peruse also. And I also wanted to add at the end of the webinar today, you're going to be getting an email from us that asks you to subscribe to our newsletter. So if you want to hear more about all of the cool probiotic work that we're doing, subscribe to our newsletter and check it out, because we've got a lot of good features that go there. I think the work that you guys do is so cool, and I love being a part of those videos with you. So definitely check them out. The 3rd one is in progress and will be coming soon. So make sure you guys keep checking back for that. Kelly, do you have some time to go into some questions? Because we have like a couple good ones.
Absolutely. I'm here for you. Okay,
cool. So Ronan would like to know, how exactly did you learn and get into sailing?
That's a great question. So before I went to Sea Base down in Florida, I had no idea how to sail, which was kind of ironic because I got hired for the sailing job. So I was quick to learn while I also had to teach other people how to sail. So my first opportunity was sailing for the job that I was hired to do. And I quickly learned, because as soon as you're on the water for a few days, you pick it up quick, and then it's pretty easy to teach the rest of the people who were coming to the camp to learn how to sail.
I never got into sailing. I think that the boat life is really interesting, but it was never an opportunity. I'm like more a motorboat person than a sailing person.
Well, any boat experience is good experience in my mind. Definitely helps for the marine biology career.
I like to say even a bad day out on the boat is better than a good day in the office. So
exactly.
Mary asks us, do you find that the corals from the trees, and then plant them into the coral reef have more problems than those grown like on the reef? Or why do you grow them on the trees?
That's a great question. So that was a big part of what we were researching, was how these trees are helpful or maybe not to these corals. But we would take the pieces of those corals that came from a coral that actually fragments into multiple other corals. So that's what it does in nature. It breaks apart and forms more corals. So we were just kind of breaking it apart just like it would in nature, and then tying those up onto the trees. And that allows the water to flow past the corals quite easily, so it gets fresh water. And then it keeps it up off of the reef where there's competition from algae or organisms that eat the coral. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a jump start of growth, so it can grow past a certain size so that it can survive better on the reef when we put it back on the coral reef.
And we have one, we're not going to be able to take all the questions. I will just say that you guys are having some really great questions, so we're going to take a couple more. If you wanted to see anything on the slides that we've already gone over, this webinar is recorded to Facebook, and we also download the recording and put it on YouTube. So if we don't get back to something that you wanted to see, we will be recording it, so don't worry about that. We have one other question. Well, we have two more questions that we'll take, I think, and then in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get things wrapped up. If you do have to jump off the webinar, though, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to check out next week's webinar with Michelle Donahue. Michelle is one of my favorite people and does science communication for the Smithsonian Marine Station. Erin put the link for you guys in the webinar, so make sure to check out hers. Oh my gosh. She will be talking about how she communicates all the awesome science that happens here at the Smithsonian. So without further ado, we're going to get right into these questions. Erin, I think, had a really good one, and it says, this question is for both Kelly and Laura. Did you face particular challenges as a woman in marine biology, be it pay inequality or being passed over for career opportunities? And Kelly, I'll let you go ahead and take that.
You know, I had a lot of mentors in my life. I was really lucky that a lot of mentors trusted me. But one of the big things that got me so interested in Dr. Nicole Fogarty's lab was that she was female. And I kind of bypassed working with men for my higher education, not on purpose, but I just didn't get that opportunity to be judged for a woman as much because I really enjoyed working with a female in science. And I gotta say, Dr. Nicole Fogarty is one for the running. She definitely is up there just crushing the marine science world as a female, and she's very inspirational.
Very cool. I think it really comes down to your mentors and like just supporting one another. I mean, to answer that question also, Erin, I didn't have the same experience as Kelly. So yes, I have dealt with that quite a bit in my career. I'm also a strong and opinionated and loud woman, so I sometimes struggle with that. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, if I could give you some advice, or if you're struggling with that also, you just have to keep staying true to yourself and standing up for yourself and just learn like what you will and will not take in a mentor and apply that moving forward. And be a better mentor as you get older. Like, I think, you know, I know that I'll do my best to be that sort of mentor for younger generations of scientists. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here doing career dives for all of you wonderful people. But yeah, I think that was a great question, and I'm really glad that you asked it. I won't go into too much because this isn't my career dive. This is Kelly's career dive. So one other question for you, Kelly. So an anonymous attendee says, hello. I think they might be an intern with you at the National Aquarium. They want to know, can you talk a little bit about the graduate school process, how you found the program that was a good fit, the application process, etc., especially since coming from Maryland all the way down to Florida?
Yeah, it was a big life change. So it definitely took an open mind to just jump right in. But I actually reached out to a professor, Dr. Nicole Fogarty, before I came. And that was very important for me because I wanted to get the financial side of school covered. So I wanted to work as an employee in her lab and cover a lot of the tuition. And if I would have just gone straight to NOVA without reaching out to an advisor first, I would have ended up paying a lot of money for my career. So if I have any advice, it's to reach out to professors, ask about their science, read their papers, and see if they would be a good fit for you and see if they have an opening in the lab. I think that's very important to try and get as much of the tuition covered because school can very much get expensive.
That is great. Great advice. So, okay, I think we're going to run out of time a little bit. Kelly, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen with us.
Sure.
So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all your really, really great questions. If you have a question that didn't get answered, or if you want to know a little bit more, you can go ahead and send us an email at smseducation@si.edu, and that email is in the chat for you. You can also reach out to us if you're watching this on Facebook or after the fact on YouTube. The Champ Lab has an amazing Twitter, so definitely check that out. And like I said, we're going to be sending you an email about subscribing to our newsletter. So all these really great ways that you can stay in touch with us and hear about all the really cool science that we're doing here at the station and at the exhibits. Kelly, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to everyone watching and joining us.
I had so much fun. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, we really appreciated all of your guys' awesome questions, and Kelly, all of your awesome experience. That's all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for sticking around with us a little bit after. But before we go, I'd like to ask you, we've been asking all of our panelists, is there one final thing, like is there one piece of closing advice that you want to leave with everyone who's joining us who wants to have a career path in marine science?
My big thing, the thing that's gotten me so far is I've realized what my passion was, and I tried to go after it as much as possible. I tried to be as proactive as I could to get as many experiences as I could as a marine biologist. So if you're passionate, try to get involved. That's the biggest thing. Add some things to your resume, meet new people, and really expand your horizon in marine biology, because there's so many different topics to look at and explore.
And if you're interested in getting involved with the Smithsonian Marine Station or the Ecosystems exhibit, we are always looking for volunteers and interns. It's a little different right now in the current situation, but definitely check out our websites and check out our Facebook for more opportunities that come through from our end. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us. If you enjoyed this program, like I said before, please join us again next week. I'll be interviewing Michelle Donahue, science and technology journalist and communications extraordinaire. Michelle's a champion collaborator with the Smithsonian Marine Station, and you can find the registration links for the live streams on our Facebook page. We've also shared them with you in the chat. Please make sure to join us next week. We have 3 more career dives in our series. So stay tuned for all of those wonderful, wonderful career dives. Kelly, thanks so much, and we'll see you guys maybe next week.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.